The Teflon Don, and the final proof that Russiagate was all just a big waste of time. Let's talk about it, y'all. Middle America. It would probably be a good idea to unmute myself. What's going on, dear listener? Well, it appears that our good friend, the Donald, has once again proven to be the Teflon Don. Yesterday, the Senate Republicans, killed the January 6th Commission, which was going to be kind of like the 9/11 Commission, wherein you investigate down to the nitty-gritty and find out what the causes were. And for some reason, the Republicans did not want that commission to be held with those commensurate investigations. This is very, very interesting to me. Now, I have said in numerous videos on my other channel that I believe that Mr. Trump should face a prison sentence for the rest of his life due to the actions of what took place on January 6th. Now, many of my very, I'll say, well-meaning Trump-supporting friends are credulous when I make such a statement. They say, Finn, what are you talking? He wasn't responsible for that. And of course, what they want to do is limit it to his speech, even though there was enough in the speech to make that point, considering all the violent rhetoric of the previous speakers. But what I really emphasized was a couple things. One of the things that was very, very curious to me that I actually brought up in the previous video, which none of the Trump supporters even began to pretend to try to refute. And by the way, some of my closest friends in this channel are Trump supporters. So anybody that watched me throughout Russiagate and all the rest of it knew that I thought the Russiagate thing was nonsense. I thought the Zelensky call was nonsense. I said as much. I said it was a giant distraction. I said that this has nothing to do with attacking American democracy, yada, yada, yada. And I got called a Trump supporter, a bootlicker, blah, 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 blah. So I'm the last human being on the planet that you can say is one of these anti-Trump folks. However, here's the thing that gets me about many of my Trump supporting friends. On the one hand, they'll say Trump is an alpha male and Trump is the prototypical guy and the prototypical capitalist Western man and blah, blah, blah. That's why we like him and that's why you limp-wristed liberals hate him. Okay. That being the case, I am going to look at the data that we're about to review with the assumption that Trump, being the alpha male that he is and was on January 6th, had ultimate and complete control. That's what I'm going to assume, because that's the projection. Here's Rising. Now, Rising is a, their shtick is we've got a left winger, that's Crystal, and then we've got a right winger, that's Sager, okay? And so that's kind of the design of the show. Let's go back in time and see what they had to say about the situation.
They had ample evidence that protesters may be targeting the U.S. Capitol directly and didn't really act on that evidence. They were directed to not use some of their...
Well, let's talk about the first part about it. The first thing is that the the folks in power and in influence are claiming they had no idea that this riot was about to occur. Unfortunately, that does not match what the various intelligence agencies had said. Now, I'm not one of these people that says you should just lazily believe everything that the intelligence organizations tell us. See the Iraq war, see the Syria nonsense. So I'm not for that. However, the fact of the matter is, anybody with a computer or a phone and an internet connection could see that these folks on Parler were insane. And I already talked about this, how Linwood said, in a couple days, it's time to fight, use your wealth and your blood. And I listed on the video the constant stream of these crazy militia, insane people that were talking about how they were going to come down there 1776. They were going to give their blood. They literally talked about killing people, hanging Mike Pence. This was out in public source for everyone to see. You did not need to be in the intelligence agencies to know that these people were planning something. But let's go with it. They planned it in broad daylight. And one of the things that was really curious to me, and I talked about this in the video. Now here is DeWalt. What about Antifa? We don't need Antifa. Secondly, DeWalt, if it was Antifa, why is it that the Republicans are against the commission? Wouldn't it make sense to vindicate Mr. Trump and the patriots that were being horrifically slandered as being far-right crazy people? If the Republicans in the Senate believed that this was Antifa that really did it, then they would want the commission and they would want the findings to be revealed, right? That makes sense. If I truly believe that it was the opposing group that did it, I would want a 1/6 commission so that Trump and the rest of them could be exonerated. But for some reason, Senate Republicans don't want us looking at the details. Why is that? Here is just one of the many crazy tweets from those poor misguided souls on Parler. This one I thought was really, really interesting. This was happening live in real time. These guys were posting in real time. Look at this statement. This is one of the guys who was in the building at the time. Pelosi requested National Guard and Pentagon denied, all caps. Stand up now, patriots everywhere, end quote. This was literally happening. He posted that as he was charging the building. How did he know that? How did some random dude know that Pelosi called for help from the National Guard and was denied? How did that guy know that? Well, the person could say, well, it's a lucky guess. Well, it's a hell of a guess because he was right. Now, how in the world could he have known something like that? Wouldn't the assumption be that if you storm the Capitol of the United States of America to ratify and certify election results, wouldn't the National Guard and every other paramilitary organization we have on hand, wouldn't you expect to be intercepted by those folks? How in the world did this guy know? How did he know? Very interesting. Well, Crystal, maybe you can help us. How did he know?
To not use some of their most potent and aggressive crowd control tactics.
I'll let her say it again.
Some of their most to not really act on that evidence. They were directed to not use some of their most potent and aggressive crowd control tactics.
Those tactics are reserved for people standing up for black people and Palestinians. We continue.
Obviously, many people pointed out, very different than the response to the Black Lives Matter protesters.
When department leadership directed the unit not to use some of its most powerful crowd controls, such as stun grenades, rank-and-file officers later said they believed they would have helped fight the crowds that eventually overtook them and broke into the building. Heavy or less lethal weapons were not used that day because of orders from leadership.
But even things like
orders from leadership. And remember, Donald Trump is the mega powerful, strong alpha male. He runs the whole shop. So I'm going to put it on him because y'all keep telling me, right, that Donald Trump is an alpha male and he's a man's man and he's not a pushover and that he's in control. Okay, well then if he's in control, then I'm going to put it on him. He told those people to stand down, essentially. Not use their more crazy tactics, which gives explanatory power. You know, one of the errors, I guess you can call it an error, I made in the previous Trump video was I kind of said, look at the police and the way they're handling these people, right? They literally open the gate and let these people stroll right through, literally. And I was like, hey, here we go. Here's an example of police. And one of my, I think it was BM fan, who's no fan of police, believe me, said, yeah, bro, but if you think about it, there were hundreds of them to like 4 or 5 cops. What were the cops going to do? That's true. What would you do? You got a mob of very, very angry. You don't know if they're armed. There's a gallows about 20 feet away from you. People talking about hanging Mike Pence. What would you do? You'd probably let him go too. Why were those police in that situation, though, where they were so vastly outnumbered? How in the world were these police so outnumbered on a day like that?
Their riot shields, some of them hadn't been stored properly, so they shattered when they were used. Others of them were on a bus that was locked, so they couldn't even get to them.
It's almost, you had a bunch of people in a locked up bus. They locked them in. Couldn't let. Just imagine this. Unbelievable.
What they've basically been saying is, look, if you had a few more officers on the ground, a few hundred more officers, none of this ultimately would have come to pass. This says it's even more than that. If those officers that were there just didn't have defective equipment, then none of this may have ultimately unfolded. So it really is outrageous. And I think it also raises the question, where did that directive come from to basically stand down?
Governor, what?
That's a good question. Where would such a directive come from to stand down? That's a very interesting question. Now, before we get into that, Rich Yonker says, no protester had a weapon. Well, I don't know how in the world you could know that, Rich, because there were literally thousands of them over there. So I don't know how you could say no protester had a weapon. But are you seeing this? These people were told to stand down. Some of them went as far as locking them in buses. They had defective shields. And this is on the day of the ratification of the President of the United States of America. Literally, the entire world has eyes on the Capitol. And we didn't have the National Guard when we had a group of very hostile, angry people telling us explicitly on a public forum about their homicidal ideations. And instead of increasing security and minimizing the body mass closer and closer, basically the closer you get to the target, the more you want to limit the mass of bodies that are there to avoid first collateral damage, and then, obviously the main thing that you're afraid of. That's the procedure. None of that was enacted. Why? This is basic stuff. Listen, in around 2012, I knew somebody, actually it was VP Biden, was visiting Camp Lejeune, and one of my friends was on security detail there. And it was pretty heavy. And it was just a routine visit. But for the ratification of the presidency, which is the pinnacle of our democratic process, not only do we not have extras, we have less, and then the equipment they have is all destroyed if they have any equipment. Okay. All right. Well, let's see what this guy has to say.
To basically stand down.
Governor, what did the...
This, by the way, is the Republican governor of Maryland, who, when he heard what happened, along with all the rest of us in America and the world, he's like, I'm going to deploy the National Guard. And he also has riot-trained civil disturbance police folks over there. I'm going to send those guys too. You guys are going to be good to go. But we're a nation of laws. And so what he has to do is get clearance from the Secretary of Defense. Now, real quick in regard to the Secretary of Defense, that's another very, very interesting situation. Another situation where my friends who support Trump, you have got to make up your mind. Either he's the alpha male and responsible for everything, or he's responsible for nothing. Here is, ladies and gentlemen, the Secretary of Defense who was there at the time. Okay, this is the guy that had the most authority at the time. His name was Chris Miller. Please note when Mr. Miller was appointed by Mr. Trump. 9 November 2020. That's almost a week after he lost the election. His initial guy left office on the 9th, and then he was replaced literally the same day by Mr. Chris Miller. And Mr. Chris Miller, Trump appointed Chris Miller, who is responsible to give the okay so the National Guard can come in and rescue our democracy.
Secretary of Defense said, what, in denying authorization for the Maryland National Guard, what was the reason given?
Well, none of us really spoke to the Secretary.
Now look. Here's Middle Earth. I love him to death. Here's Middle Earth. Middle Earth is saying Trump asked for an increase. Okay, Middle Earth. Here is Larry Hogan. This is the governor of Maryland, who's a Republican. Please listen to what he said. So he's calling to get authorization, okay? Here's what he says.
Authorization for the Maryland National Guard, what was the reason given?
Well, none of us really spoke to the Secretary of Defense, but we were repeatedly being told by the National Guard at the national level that we did not have authorization. I was actually...
The Secretary of Defense wouldn't pick up the phone. They tried to call him. Later on, Mr. Larry Hogan says, yeah, we called the homie for an hour and a half. Couldn't get the SecDef on the line. Shouldn't the Secretary of Defense be reaching out to him and saying, hey, we really screwed up. For some reason, we didn't deploy the National Guard. We've got these flat-footed police officers who are doing their best. We need your help ASAP right now. How soon can you get here? Isn't that what should happen, considering the whole planet saw what was deploy the National Guard? Does that make sense to you, Middle Earth? So Trump initially asked for an increase, is what you're saying, prior to the events happening. And then for an hour and a half, no, he was not playing golf. He was in the White House watching it on TV, literally. And after about 2 hours, he stepped out and said, you're very special people. We love you. Go home. That's what happened. Let's not try to rewrite history, because all this shit played out in full relief for all of us to see. That's what happened. They did not call for an increase in the National Guard. The National Guard was begging them to give them authorization to help.
On the phone with Leader Hoyer, who was pleading with us to send the Guard. He was yelling across the room to Schumer, and they were back and forth saying, we do have the authorization. And I'm saying, I'm telling you, we do not have the authorization. And so we had multiple.
So Chuck Schumer's saying, yeah, we got it. Chuck Schumer's basically saying, screw the protocol, send the Guard in there. And this guy is a Republican, and Republicans are more like, letter of the law, fine. Okay, fine. I mean, if they would have deployed guys earlier, maybe Ashley Babbitt and Sicknick and all those people wouldn't have died. But you see what's happening here. Schumer's saying, man, screw the rules. We have authorization. Republican is saying, nah, bro. Nah, I'm not doing shit unless I get authorization. Yeah. And I knew you were kidding, Tasco. We continue.
The general was, we running up the flagpole. We're ready. Don't have authorization. Don't have authorization.
We don't have authorization. We don't have authorization. But here Trump is telling his people, oh, I wanted the Guard to happen. So as Mike so eloquently points out, based on everything you're saying and all that I've read, something stinks. Correct. Mike is correct. Now, I don't know the brother, but he's right. Something is really fishy. Now, listen, it is obvious. I got a famous Catholic friend. He says, Ray Charles could see that from space, he says. Stuck for a lot. Guys, it's obvious, right? It is obvious what happened that day. It is obvious what happened today. And to Mike's point, both sides are playing a game to make the other look bad. But in this particular situation, unfortunately, it's just the facts that made Mr. Trump look bad. Mr. Trump, my belief is that Mr. Trump because Lynn Wood is a close friend of Mr. Trump who worked for Mr. Trump. And Lynn Wood ginned up all that rage and anger with those people. And you're trying to tell me Trump had no idea? Look, I'm the one that's been saying that Trump is intelligent. I'm the one that's been saying for the last 4 years, Trump is a very brilliant man, and people who say he's stupid are silly. So in order for him to have no idea what was going on when one of his close friends was heavy on this Parler app, and everybody on some punk kid like me could track all this nonsense from Twitter and Parler, and another punk kid like BM Fan, who's the one that put me on to Lynn Wood in the first place. BM Fan you, but the President of the United States did not? Does that make sense to you? Now, what is this all revealing? What is this all revealing? Here's what it reveals. And Mike talked about this. Okay, I do know Mike Ruck. Mike talked about this. You remember all the nonsense that the Democratic Party was putting us through and subjecting us to? And not just, and when I say Democratic Party, I also mean CNN and MSNBC. Because we all agree, right? That the CNN and MSNBC are simply the media arm of the Democratic Party. And not the Democratic Party, because that would include Bernie Sanders and Tulsi and all the rest of them. They are the media arm of the establishment Democratic Party. And the establishment Democratic Party for 4 years were talking about how Russia was the bane of our existence. These people are attacking our democracy. Trump is attacking our democracy. He's in collusion with Russia. He tried to get information about Biden from Zelensky, blah, so we need to impeach him. And they literally ran hundreds of stories about Trump and Russia, and how all of a sudden these people became very constitutional and very, we love democracy, yada, yada, yada. And it was all lies, and it was all BS, and it was nonsense. I was doing some research for this video, and I was looking back at the Mueller testimony. Some of those people need to be investigated as well on the blue side, because they violated some laws. And however you feel about Trump, he's still an American citizen with rights. So I defended Trump all through the Russiagate stuff, not because I was defending Trump, but because I knew what the establishment was trying to do. See, I knew that they wanted us distracted with this Trump, this Russia nonsense for two reasons. One, they could be successful, in which case they felt really confident about a Biden v. Pence nomination. Because remember, this is prior to COVID. Or two, they wanted to distract us from the fact that the very thing that they accuse Trump of doing is literally what they did to establish Hillary Clinton with Bernie Sanders. Okay? So I'm not one of these people that says Trump is bad, everything Trump does is bad. However, guys, come on. This is obvious. We know what happened. Trump is an egomaniac. He was embarrassed. He was embarrassed that he was going to have to concede power to a person he thought was beneath him. You know, Tom Brady, I love him. I think Tom Brady is the greatest leader of all time in sports anywhere. Anywhere. Right? And he's only, in my opinion, has one flaw. They played against the Chicago Bears. I think it was Mitch Trubisky. Mitch Trubisky is a no-name quarterback that in 20 years is going to be a $500 Jeopardy question. And Brady, it was a famous game where Brady thought it was third down or fourth down, and it was really fifth down. If you know anything about football, that's a joke. He loses the game in humiliating fashion. Now, the tradition is you meet at the center of the field, you shake hands, good luck, tap the guy on the bum, and off you go to your locker room. You're a loser for the day, right? Now, thankfully, the Biddeford Vikings, which is the team that I was a linebacker for, we went undefeated, so we never had to do that. Tom Brady refused to shake Mitch Trubisky's hand. Then he loses to I think it was Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is a Hall of Fame player, and he goes and he shakes his hand. People going, well, what the hell? People couldn't figure out, how come you wouldn't shake Mitch Trubisky's hand, but you shake Patrick Mahomes' hand? And to me, it makes perfect sense. Tom Brady views Mitch Trubisky as being beneath his dignity to even be on the same field as him. So if he beats him, he's not going to shake his hand because he believes Trubisky is beneath him. Patrick Mahomes, Brady recognizes as another Hall of Fame quarterback, and I think in Brady's mind, there's no shame in losing to him. Mr. Trump lost to a guy who he believed. I think losing to Biden was more embarrassing for Trump than losing to Hillary would have been. Because I've said this a million times. Believe what you want. Hillary Clinton was the most intellectually acute and agile and the most gifted debater that I've ever seen. And as far as policies go, I don't agree with most of her policies, but she knew her stuff. Nobody has ever once in her very long career in the public eye ever attacked the integrity of her intellect. So I think all this came down to was Trump's ego. I think he was sore about the loss, and he wanted to, this was a Hail Mary. He thought maybe we can stop this issue. And, you know, when we played the video of Giuliani calling the senators and saying, hey, we better slow this thing down. He had no concern whatsoever about the safety. I mean, literally, these guys were hiding in cabinets, and Giuliani's calling them and saying, hey, we need to slow down this confirmation hearing. That was their concern. I think it's plain as day what happened here. It's obvious what happened. And if you're a Trump supporter, I get it. But wasn't the whole thing about Trump the fact that he was centering and prioritizing America, which I can sympathize with? Wasn't the whole thing about make America great again? So shouldn't America be the number one value of a Trump supporter? So if you're a Trump supporter, this guy facilitated an attack on our country. I say this all the time. Let's imagine the January 6th riots, right? Let's imagine the January 6th riots, only we're in an alternate universe. And in this situation, it is Barack Hussein Obama who lost to Donald Trump. And then the Capitol gets flooded with thousands of Muslim, very angry, very brown Muslim people. And they had this social media platform called Al-Sham. And in Al-Sham, they were talking about jihad, fi sabilillah, blah, 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 blah. We're going to raise the La ilaha illallah flag above the White House. They were saying all this stuff on social media. And then the day that the attack happens, Mr. Obama has 2 or 3 people talking about jihad, 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 fi sabilillah, blah, 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 blah. Right? And then he goes to retreats to the White House and watches for an hour and a half as the White House is stormed by thousands of angry brown Muslims screaming, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. One guy over here has the ISIS flag waving. The other guy has over there a gallows set up, ready to execute Al-Kafarun. And Obama sits on his ass for an hour and a half. People are constantly calling him, hey, bro, we're under attack, we're under attack, we're under attack. And Obama just sits there and does nothing for an hour and a half. And then it comes out that Obama told them beforehand to stand down, locked a group of them in a bus, and then ignored calls for an hour and a half. Are you trying to tell me that these Republicans would say, yeah, we don't need to look into that? We don't need to look into that. That's what the Republicans would say? I think you're lying if you say that, because you know damn well there'd be a commission and Mr. Obama would be under the jail right now. You know it. This January 6th situation has revealed exactly the most cynical version of American politics that all of us feared was true. If the Democratic Party and MSNBC and CNN, if those people really loved America and really believed in democracy, like they'd cry into the camera for 4 years about with the Russia, Zelensky stuff that had zero evidence behind it, they would be harping on this thing every day since January 6th. How many CNN, MSNBCs, little thingamajiggies have you seen about January 6th outside of January? These people gave us 4 years of this Russia nonsense. Where is the January 6th stuff? Where is it? And for Republicans, it also shows you the hypocrisy of Republicans. And I'm sorry, but the obvious racism in many Republican minds. Because all of us know that if this was a brown group of jihadists screaming Allahu Akbar and jumping on people and beating them with flagpoles, you know very well how the Republicans would have responded. So this January 6th situation makes it very, very clear about the priorities of both of the major parties in this country. And that's why, one of the Ogun is saying, man, just vote independent. You know, there is that big debate between Jimmy Dore and the Justice Democrats as to whether or not you could change things from the inside out, blah, blah, blah. I have no idea, but I do know this. Whoever the Republican candidate and whoever the Democratic candidate is in 2024, I'm not voting for them. Look, ultimately, guys, this is on us. We're constantly allowing these people to blackmail us into voting for them. Constantly. And we've got to take accountability for it. I'm so sick and tired of hearing people complain about the 1% this and 1% that. We are giving these people the power, and every single 4 years that you vote for the lesser of two evils, you're taking part in evil by your own admission. Now, look, I'm not saying this to like beat up on us, okay? What I'm saying is, how long are we going to let these people disrespect us to our face? That's my problem. How long are we going to allow that to happen? Unbelievable. Love your neighbor. Take care of each other. Middle America, we are the media. Till next time, guys.